The grand hall of the Pentagon gleamed under blinding white lights. Medals and stars glittered across the uniforms of the gathered officers, each man and woman standing in stiff formation as if history itself were about to be written. Captain Elena Cross, only 32, yet already one of the Army's most decorated officers, stood at attention in the center aisle. She had just returned from a mission so classified that even most generals weren't permitted to read the briefing. Her body ached from weeks in hostile terrain, her mind still sharp from decisions that had kept entire cities safe. Tonight she expected recognition, perhaps even her father's rare approval. But instead of pride, she saw fury. At the podium stood General Marcus Cross, her father. His jaw was clenched, his hands white-knuckled on the edges of the lectern. For a fleeting second, Elena remembered him as the towering figure of her childhood, the man who had drilled discipline into her before she even knew what the word meant. Then his voice erupted through the hall, thunderous and sharp enough to slice the air. "You are a traitor," he declared. The words echoed against the marble walls, rippling through the assembly like a shockwave. Elena's breath caught in her chest. She thought she had misheard, that some cruel joke was being played in the most sacred of military chambers. But the silence that followed told her otherwise. Hundreds of officers stared at her with wide, unblinking eyes. Marcus descended from the podium, his boots striking the floor with deliberate, punishing weight. When he reached her, he didn't hesitate. His hand seized her collar, and with a violent rip he tore the insignia from her uniform. One by one, medals, ribbons, and patches fell to the floor like discarded relics. Gasps erupted around the room, yet no one stepped forward. Elena held her posture rigid, her eyes fixed straight ahead. She would not break, not in front of them, and not in front of him. But inside, her heart pounded like artillery fire. The man stripping away her honor was not just her commanding officer. He was her father, and in that moment, before the gaze of the entire Pentagon, he had sentenced her not only as a soldier, but as his daughter, betrayer of both blood and nation. The hall remained frozen in stunned silence, broken only by the sound of fabric tearing as General Marcus Cross's hands yanked again at his daughter's uniform. The seam split down the back, the fibers surrendering with a harsh crack. A rush of cold air touched Elena's skin. She felt dozens of pairs of eyes burning into her, eager to witness her humiliation. But then, the humiliation shifted into shock. A fragment of black ink emerged beneath the torn jacket, just enough to silence the whispers. Officers craned their necks, their rigid composure unraveling into disbelief. Marcus had meant to strip her of every symbol of service, but he had exposed something he never intended. Elena drew in a steady breath, unclasped the remains of her jacket herself, and let the fabric fall at her feet. Then, deliberately, she turned her back to the audience. The tattoo blazed across her shoulders, a pair of silver-edged wings framing a single star. Bold, stark, and unmistakable. Gasps rippled through the chamber like a wave. The emblem belonged to the Spectre unit, the Black Ops ghost force whispered about in rumors, but officially erased from history more than 10 years ago. Only legends had carried that mark, and only one authority in the nation, the president, could authorize their missions. "She's Spectre," someone breathed from the shadows. "That's impossible," another officer hissed. Spectre was disbanded. The air seemed to vibrate with fear and awe. To those who knew, the tattoo was not decoration. It was a seal of authority, of sacrifice, of missions too dark ever to be spoken aloud. And in that instant, Elena Cross was no longer just a disgraced captain. She was a specter come back from the grave, a living reminder of the shadows the military had tried to bury. Marcus Cross faltered, his hand still clenching the shredded fabric, his rage dissolving into confusion. He had wanted to strip his daughter of honor. Instead, he had revealed the one truth that no tribunal, no accusation, no rank could erase. Elena stood motionless, her breathing calm, her back bared to the hall. She did not speak. She didn't need to. The mark spoke louder than words ever could, and in that silence, the entire Pentagon realized Captain Elena Cross was not a traitor. She was something far more dangerous. The moment hung in the air like a blade. The tattoo glimmered faintly under the unforgiving lights, and the weight of recognition crashed over the officers in the hall. Whispers broke out in a storm, some fearful, some incredulous, all carrying the same undertone of disbelief. Impossible. Only the president could. Spectre doesn't exist anymore. The buzz rose until it threatened to splinter the room into chaos. Yet Marcus Cross, still gripping the torn jacket, seemed deaf to it all. His jaw tightened, his chest heaving, fury battling against the shadow of doubt creeping into his eyes. He opened his mouth, ready to bark another order, ready to seize control again by force of will alone. But before he could speak, a chair scraped across the marble floor. The sound echoed louder than the murmurs, pulling every gaze toward the front row. Admiral Nathaniel Rowan, the Navy's highest-ranking officer present, rose slowly to his feet. Rowan was a man known for his composure, a commander whose calm had steadied entire fleets. Now, even he seemed unsettled. His eyes locked on Elena's tattoo, lingered there a long moment, then lifted to her face. For the first time in the ceremony, his voice carried more weight than Marcus's fury. "Oh, God," Rowan breathed, the words deliberate, unshakable. Then, louder, for the entire hall to hear, "She outranks you." The declaration struck like a detonation. Silence consumed the chamber in an instant. Dozens of generals and admirals, officers with decades of command, froze in place. The chain of command had been reversed in 3 words. Marcus Cross's face drained of color. The iron authority he had wielded his entire career wavered, crumbling under the weight of truth. His daughter, his soldier, was no longer under his jurisdiction. She was Spectre. She belonged to a command higher than any of them, higher even than him. For the first time in her life, Elena saw fear flicker in her father's eyes. The silence after Rowan's words lingered like a shroud, until the Admiral's voice cut clean through it. "This proceeding is suspended, effective immediately." No one moved. The generals, lining the walls, looked at one another, waiting for someone to challenge him. Marcus Cross's mouth twitched, his pride ready to explode into protest, but the weight of Rowan's authority and the tattoo still burning across Elena's back paralyzed him. Rowan didn't wait for argument. He strode toward Elena, his expression unreadable, and gestured to 2 security officers at the edge of the hall. "With me," he ordered. The men fell into step, not as jailers, but as escorts. Elena bent down, lifted the shredded remains of her jacket from the floor, and clutched it loosely in her hands. The hall watched her in silence as she walked beside Rowan, every boot step echoing like a drumbeat of judgment. The corridors of the Pentagon swallowed them, sterile walls and humming lights replacing the suffocating eyes of the crowd. Only when they reached a reinforced steel door did Rowan finally slow. He dismissed the guards with a glance, leaving himself alone with her. "You understand what just happened in there?" he asked, his tone level, almost clinical. Elena met his gaze. "My father tried to erase me." Rowan studied her a long moment before replying. "No, your father exposed you. And now the world thinks you're a traitor who's been hiding behind Spectre's ghost." The words hit harder than she expected. though her face betrayed nothing. Rowan stepped closer, lowering his voice. Whether you are guilty or innocent doesn't matter right now. Perception matters. And perception has already turned against you. Your father believes it. The council believes it. Within hours, the media will believe it too. You're a threat to your enemies and to your allies. His hand pressed the access pad, and the steel door groaned open, revealing a small, sterile chamber inside. Gray walls, a single bench, no windows, no clock. A room meant not for prisoners, but for containment. For your safety, Rowan said, his voice heavy with caution, and for theirs. You'll stay here until we sort this out. Elena stepped past him, her spine straight, her movements deliberate. She turned back just once, her voice low but steady. I don't need protection, Admiral. I need the truth. And when I find who's behind this, they'll wish they'd never heard the name Valkyrie. Rowan's jaw tightened. He gave the faintest nod. Then stay alive long enough to prove it. The door sealed shut with a metallic thud, leaving Elena alone in the cold glow of the chamber. For the first time, she exhaled, not in relief, but in preparation. The world now thought she was the villain, and if she couldn't uncover the real enemy, they would be right. The chamber was silent except for the faint hum of ventilation, a sterile monotone meant to gnaw at the mind. Elena sat on the cold metal bench, hands clasped, forcing her breathing into rhythm. She had been in tighter boxes than this. Spectre had trained her to endure far worse. Inevitably, the silence carried her backward. Her thoughts drifted to the beginning, to the day she signed her name on a form that officially didn't exist. She had been 19, standing on a rain-slick runway at Fort Bragg, a single duffel bag at her feet. No family there to see her off, no ceremony. Only a recruiter's voice echoing in her ears. You'll disappear into a program that doesn't exist. Do you understand the cost? She had understood, and still, she stepped forward. The training stripped her bare and rebuilt her from the ground up. Days blurred into weeks of exhaustion. 4 hours of sleep at best, endless drills, live fire exercises that punished hesitation with pain. She was taught to shoot until aiming felt as natural as breathing. By the end of her first mission, she could place a bullet through a moving target at 1,000 yards in wind and rain. That was the day they gave her a code name. Valkyrie. Not Elena, not Cross, just Valkyrie. A title she earned by carrying the lives of 10 men on her trigger finger. She wore like armor because the world had taken her name and given her only shadows in return. But she wasn't alone. Faces rose in her memory. Mackenzie, the communications genius who could bend signals like clay. Reyes, the bomb technician who could dismantle explosives blindfolded. Chun, the medic who had saved her life more times than she could count. They weren't teammates. They were family, forged in fire and silence. Together they had been ghosts, vanishing into missions no one ever admitted happened. And then, without warning, it all ended. Spectre Unit was dissolved. The survivors scattered, the files buried deep enough to be forgotten. But Elena never forgot. The ink on her back was more than a tattoo. It was a vow, a warning, and a reminder that she had once belonged to something greater than herself. Now, in the cold isolation of the Pentagon chamber, she clenched her fists. Someone had dragged her back into those shadows. Someone wanted her erased, and they had used her own father to begin the work. Her jaw set. If they wanted Valkyrie back, they would get her. But this time, she would be the one doing the hunting. The chamber walls pressed in, colorless and unyielding, but Elena barely saw them. Memories stirred instead. Memories of a house that had felt less like a home and more like a barracks. Her father, General Marcus Cross, had never truly been Dad. From her earliest years, he had treated her not as a daughter, but as a recruit. She remembered standing in the backyard at 8 years old, tiny feet planted in the grass, while he barked instructions about posture, discipline, and honor. Other children were praised for drawings on the fridge. Elena was corrected for the angle of her salute. "The cross name is a torch," he told her once, his voice sharp as a command. "You will carry it, and you will not let it fall." At first, she had tried to please him. She had studied harder than anyone at the academy, fired until her hands bled on the range, and pushed herself past exhaustion, all for the rare flicker of pride in his eyes. But pride from Marcus Cross was always conditional. When she graduated early, he said it was expected. When she volunteered for deployment at 19, he didn't ask if she was ready. He only muttered, "Don't embarrass me." Elena's chest tightened at the memory of their last conversation before she joined the Spectre program. He had appeared in her barracks doorway, imposing as ever. His words weren't fatherly concern, but a warning. "If you go, you'd better come back with results. The cross name doesn't tolerate failure." She had answered automatically, "Yes, sir." She hadn't called him Dad in years. Somewhere between the shouted orders and the silence of sniper nests, she realized she would never win his approval. His love was measured in performance, his trust given only when it served the Cross legacy. And yet, despite it all, a part of her had still hoped that someday he might look at her and see more than a soldier wearing his name. Now that hope was dead. She had watched him tear the insignia from her uniform with his own hands. In front of the world, he had chosen his pride over his daughter. Elena leaned back against the cold wall, her jaw set. If he wanted a soldier, then that's what he would get. But she would no longer be a weapon for his ambition. She would fight on her own terms. The heavy door slid open with a hiss, breaking the stillness of the containment chamber. Admiral Nathaniel Rowan stepped inside, dismissing the guards with a flick of his hand. The click of the lock echoed after them, leaving the two alone. He carried himself with the quiet authority of a man who had stared down storms at sea, his immaculate uniform betraying no weakness. Yet his eyes, sharp, calculating, watched Elena the way one might study a weapon, unsure if it was still loaded. "Captain Cross," he began, then stopped. His tone shifted, deliberate. "Or should I call you by your Spectre call sign?" "Valkyrie." The name, long buried, rippled down her spine. She held his gaze, refusing to flinch. "Call me whatever you need to, Admiral. The truth won't change." Rowan paced once across the room, then turned on his heel, his voice low and measured. "If you're Spectre, if you truly survived when the unit was dismantled, then you are a national asset. One of the rarest weapons this country has ever forged." He paused, his expression hardening. "But if you betrayed us, if you are responsible for the lives lost on that last mission," his words slowed, deliberate as a blade, "then I will personally give the order to end you. Do you understand me?" Elena leaned forward, her voice calm, steel under velvet. "Perfectly. But you need to understand something too, Admiral. Whether you call me an asset or a liability doesn't matter. What matters is reality, and reality is that the real traitor is still out there. He's hiding in plain sight, using my father as his blunt instrument." Rowan's jaw tightened, though his composure never fully cracked. "Those are heavy accusations." "They're not accusations," Elena replied, her tone sharper now. "They're facts waiting to be proved. My father believes I leaked classified intel, but someone planted that belief in him. Someone who knows his blind spots, his pride, his need for control. They've turned him against me because it was the easiest way to bury the truth." For the first time, Rowan's mask slipped just slightly. Doubt flickered in his eyes, not toward her, but toward the institution he had spent his life serving. He was beginning to see the shape of the shadow she was describing. "I don't need you to trust me," Elena finished, her voice steady, resolute. "I need you to open your eyes before they bury both of us." The Admiral studied her in silence for a long, heavy moment. Finally, he nodded once, curtly. "You'll remain in isolation. For your safety, and for everyone else's. I'll begin an independent review. But understand this, Captain. If I find even a shred of evidence against you, I will not hesitate." Elena inclined her head. "Then look closely, Admiral. Because what you'll find isn't betrayal. It's proof of a traitor hiding among your own." Rowan's gaze lingered a heartbeat longer. Then he turned sharply and left. The door sealed shut again, leaving her in silence. Elena exhaled slowly. She hadn't convinced him, but she had bought herself time. Time was all she needed. The hours dragged in the isolation chamber, time reduced to the sterile hum of ventilation and the flicker of the fluorescent light. Elena sat rigid, her thoughts sharpening into resolve. Waiting was what her enemies wanted. They wanted her forgotten and erased. So she made her move. She pressed the comm panel on the wall. "I am invoking counsel," she said, her voice clear and steady. "I request Ethan Ward, former Spectre Unit legal advisor, under special access." The intercom crackled with static, then silence. For a moment, she thought they would ignore her demand. But nearly 10 minutes later, the door opened, and Admiral Rowan stepped inside with a tablet in hand. His expression was cautious, even skeptical. "You're certain?" he asked. "Ward left government years ago. He avoids attention. He's the only one who knows how Spectre operated," Elena replied firmly. "The only one who can decode our records. If I was framed, the proof is hidden in those shadow ledgers, and Ethan Ward knows where to find it." Rowan studied her, then gave a single nod. "Very well. I'll authorize contact. But understand, if his review contradicts you, I will send you to tribunal without hesitation." Elena met his gaze unflinchingly. "Understood. He'll find the truth." An hour later, 2 plainclothes officers escorted a man into the chamber. His hair was streaked with gray now, his eyes weary but sharp. He carried no briefcase, no laptop, only a worn leather folder tucked under his arm. "Attorney-client privilege attaches," he said immediately, his voice low, deliberate. "Everyone else out." Rowan hesitated, then gestured. The guards withdrew, leaving Ward and Elena alone. He sat across from her, opened the folder, and produced a slim gray notebook stamped with a faded Spectre crest. "Contingency journals," he explained. "Parallel logs. One coded for counsel, one left in the clear. Almost no one knew they existed." Elena leaned forward, her pulse quickening as he slid the notebook across the table. The pages bore her own handwriting from years before, block letters, sparse notes, details recorded like coordinates. She had forgotten some of these entries, yet seeing them now felt like rediscovering a lifeline. Ward tapped one underlined line with his finger. "Here, Logistics Officer Victor Calder." His badge scanned at opposite ends of the depot within 8 minutes. Impossible without a duplicate credential or a partner with cloned access. Elena's eyes narrowed. A crack in the cover story. Ward's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You write like a sniper, Valkyrie. No adjectives. Just ranges. And this," he tapped the page again, "is a shot worth taking." For the first time since the tribunal began, Elena felt the tide shift. She wasn't alone anymore. Someone had tried to bury her, but now she had a weapon. The chamber had transformed from a cage into a war room. Papers from Ethan Ward's folder lay spread across the steel table, notes scribbled in his terse handwriting alongside Elena's long-forgotten entries. Every line, every anomaly was another piece of a puzzle someone had tried very hard to bury. Ward flipped to a clean page in the contingency journal. "Here," he said, tapping with his pen. "Calder's badge. According to official logs, he accessed the depot at 2:07, and then again at 2:01 on a door 90 meters away. Same badge, overlapping times." Elena frowned. "Impossible. Unless," Ward countered, "a duplicate credential exists, which would mean an insider, someone with access to the key store." Elena leaned back, her mind racing. Spectre had taught her to look not at the surface, but at the gaps, the missing beats in the rhythm. That explains the timing failures in the mission handoff. Someone was pushing us toward collapse. A hand on the lever. Ward nodded grimly. "And it gets worse." He pulled up a tablet Rowan had reluctantly provided under sealed clearance. He tapped the screen, and grainy security footage flickered to life. A supply corridor. A soldier passing through. But the video was wrong. The shadows twitched. The frame stuttered as though spliced. "This feed was doctored," Ward said. The original audio track was replaced with looping forklift noise. Crude but fast. Whoever altered it knew panic would make people overlook the details. Elena studied the clip, her jaw tightening. Spectre used this playbook. Deep edits, false timestamps, forged access trails. Whoever framed me isn't just covering their tracks. They're using our methods. Ward set the tablet aside, which means they're not some random opportunist. They know you. They know Spectre. Elena's thoughts sharpened into focus. She could feel the net tightening, not around her, but around someone else. "Calder," she muttered. "He's the weak link. If he forged logs or handed off his badge, he's either sloppy or he's bait." Ward gave her a wary look. "Sloppy maybe, but bait? That would mean someone higher up is using him to distract you." Elena's lips curved into a grim smile. "Then it's time we stop staring at the bait and start hunting the fishermen." The more Elena and Ethan pieced together, the clearer the pattern became. The anomalies in the depot logs, the doctored video feeds, the duplicate credentials, they weren't isolated glitches. They were signatures, echoes of something Elena had seen before. She sat forward, her eyes narrowing. "This isn't new. This is recycled." Ethan arched a brow. "Recycled how?" Elena tapped the contingency journal, her finger resting on an entry from nearly 10 years earlier. The handwriting was hers, sharp block print written after a mission Spectre was never supposed to talk about. Spectre shut down a smuggling chain in Eastern Europe. Cartels, rogue buyers, and middlemen inside governments, including our own. We intercepted weapons shipments and traced them back to officers selling off U.S. stockpiles. Ethan leaned in, scanning the entry. "And you're saying this," he gestured toward the doctored feeds, "matches their methods?" "Exactly," Elena said. "The false logs, the timing slips, the way they scrub metadata but leave microscopic gaps, it's the same network. Spectre thought we dismantled it, but we only cut off one limb." Ward exhaled slowly, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Which means someone high-ranking survived. Someone with enough influence to bury the files, dissolve Spectre, and keep the operation alive in the dark." Elena's jaw tightened. Memories of that mission clawed at her. The night raids, the crates of advanced weapons hidden under tarps, the coded manifests they barely had time to copy before their extraction. She remembered the orders to destroy the evidence afterward, to burn everything Spectre had found. "National security," they said. "Some truths are too dangerous to surface." But now those truths were back. She looked at Ethan, her voice steady grim. "They didn't dismantle Spectre because we were done. They dismantled us because we got too close. And now they're trying to erase me the same way they erased the evidence. Ward tapped his pen against the journal. If you're right, then this isn't just about you. It's about rot inside the chain of command. And if that's true, we're not hunting one traitor. We're hunting a syndicate that's been feeding off the system for over a decade. Elena sat back, her hands clasped tightly together. The realization settled like ice in her chest. This wasn't a new war. It was the old one, unfinished, festering in the dark. And this time, she was fighting it alone. The chamber door swung open without warning, and Admiral Rowan strode in, a tablet clutched tight in his hand. His usual calm had been stripped away, leaving only steel. He set the device on the table between Elena and Ethan. "Watch," he said. The screen flickered to life. Surveillance footage filled the display, grainy but clear enough. A figure stepped into frame, dressed in a combat uniform. She moved with practiced precision, pausing long enough for the camera to catch her face. Elena! The timestamp placed her at the entrance of a classified weapons depot 48 hours before it exploded, killing 5 soldiers and leveling an entire stockpile of ordnance. The video zoomed in, frame by frame, her profile unmistakable. Ethan's breath hissed through his teeth. "No, that's not possible. She was with me in debrief at that time." Elena's stomach tightened, but her eyes stayed on the screen. "Look at the shadows," she said evenly. "The jitter in the frame rate. That's not me, it's composited." Rowan's voice was cold. "The media won't care about shadows. This footage is already being leaked. The headline is everywhere. Captain Elena Cross, former Spectre operative, suspected of treason." Ethan swore under his breath. "They're not just discrediting you, they're burying you alive." Elena clenched her jaw, refusing to let the weight of the footage crush her. "They're using Spectre's own tricks, deep edits, ghost signatures, fabricated timelines. The same techniques we used to make targets vanish a decade ago. Now they're turning it on me." Before Rowan could reply, his comms device buzzed. He answered tersely, listened, then snapped it shut. His expression hardened even further. "Your father just called," he said. "General Cross is demanding your immediate transfer to Army CID. He's convinced more than ever that you've been compromised." For a moment, Elena felt something colder than fear, a deep cutting ache. Her own father, armed now with what he thought was proof, was sharpening the blade against her. She straightened, her voice steady despite the storm rising inside her. "If you hand me over, Admiral, they win. They'll vanish me the way they've vanished Spectre's files, and no one will ever know the truth." Rowan's gaze lingered on her, torn between the crushing weight of evidence and the flicker of doubt she'd planted earlier. Ethan stepped in, his tone urgent. "Rowan, this video is a fabrication. I can prove it if you give me access to the raw metadata. But if you cave to Marcus now, she's gone. Forever." The Admiral stood silent for a long moment, his face unreadable. Finally he spoke. "You have 72 hours left, Captain. If you're going to prove this a forgery, you'd better move faster than the narrative." The tablet screen dimmed, leaving only Elena's reflection staring back at her, accused, condemned, and hunted. The system had branded her a traitor, and unless she could flip the board, it would succeed. The room was quiet again after Rowan's departure, but the silence felt thinner now, fragile. Elena could almost hear the ticking of the invisible clock he had given her, 72 hours. 3 days to prove her innocence before her father and the system swallowed her whole. She sat on the steel cot, rolling her shoulders as if restless, but her hands were already moving. From her boot heel, she clicked free a slim black spike, a Spectre relic she had carried for years unnoticed. It was a micro tool, designed to slip into lock systems where no official key existed. Ethan raised a brow as she fitted it to the corner of the Admiral's abandoned tablet. "You're really going to do this now?" "I don't have a choice," Elena murmured. The device vibrated faintly, lines of code flooding across the screen as the spike dug into the Pentagon's firewalls. Dormant Spectre backdoors flickered alive, passages the world had long forgotten except her. Minutes passed, the screen scrolling with directories, memos, and sealed transfers. Elena filtered ruthlessly, searching for anything tied to the weapons depot explosion. Most of the files had been scrubbed, metadata wiped clean. But Spectre had taught her a simple truth. Erasure always leaves residue. Then she found it. A hidden directory buried under layers of encryption, tagged with a code name, Project Lamia. Inside, transfer logs and encrypted authorizations traced a pattern across multiple shell corporations. And one name appeared again and again. Colonel Adrian Markham. Elena's stomach tightened. Her father's most trusted aide, the man who had stood at Marcus Cross's side for 2 decades, silent, loyal, and unyielding. She scrolled deeper. Payments routed through offshore accounts. Access clearances tied to Markham's credentials. Authorizations connected to the very depot that had exploded. Ethan leaned over her shoulder, his eyes narrowing. Markham. He's not just helping this network. He is the network. Elena exhaled slowly, her thoughts racing. Markham had always been in her father's shadow, the perfect soldier who never questioned orders. But now she saw the truth. He hadn't been following Marcus. He had been using him. She closed the tablet, her voice low and certain. My father thinks I betrayed him, but the real traitor has been standing at his side the whole time. The clock was still ticking, but now she had a name. And Spectre had taught her exactly what to do with names. The tribunal chamber was suffocating with authority. Long oak tables polished to a sheen, brass nameplates glinting under harsh light, rows of high-ranking officers seated like an audience of judges. Cameras were absent, but Elena knew the outcome here would ripple far beyond the walls. At the center stood Captain Elena Cross, wrists bound in front of her as a formality. To one side sat General Marcus Cross, her father, his face carved from stone. And near him, calm, composed, almost forgettable in his neat uniform, was Colonel Adrian Markham. The presiding officer read out the charges: dereliction, sabotage, treason. Each word was meant to pin her deeper into the ground. When the accusations ended, the tribunal allowed her to respond. Elena stepped forward, her voice steady, carrying across the chamber. The charges against me are not only false, they are manufactured. And I know by whom. A murmur rippled through the room. Her father stiffened, eyes narrowing in warning. She turned her gaze directly on Markham. Colonel Adrian Markham. The man you trust to stand at your right hand, General. The man who has manipulated logs, doctored footage, and continued a weapons trafficking network Spectre exposed a decade ago. He is your traitor, not me. The chamber erupted in whispers, officers exchanging uneasy glances. Marcus slammed his fist on the table. Enough! Markham has been by my side for 20 years. He's a soldier of honor. You will not disgrace him with this fantasy. Elena didn't flinch. Then explain why his badge scanned twice in different locations within 8 minutes. Explain why transfer authorizations with a signature appear in offshore laundering chains. Explain why every thread of this conspiracy leads back to him. All eyes turned to Markham. The colonel forced a thin smile, composed, but Rowan, seated silently at the edge of the chamber, saw it. A twitch at the corner of Markham's mouth, a pulse in his jaw, the subtle shift of a man suddenly under pressure. Fabrications, Markham said smoothly. I won't dignify this with rebuttal. Captain Cross is deflecting from her own crimes. But Rowan's sharp eyes narrowed. He had spent a lifetime studying sailors bluff their way through storms. And Markham's body language, so precise for years, was cracking. For the first time, Admiral Rowan allowed himself the faintest glimmer of certainty Elena Cross might truly be telling the truth. And Adrian Markham might be the most dangerous man in the room. The tribunal recessed, tension still hanging like smoke in the air. Officers filed out in rigid silence, avoiding each other's eyes, while guards escorted Elena down a side corridor. But before they could reach the secure wing, a commanding voice barked from behind them. "Leave us!" The guards hesitated, then obeyed. The hallway emptied, leaving General Marcus Cross standing face to face with his daughter. His expression was thunderous, his fists clenched as if he had to physically restrain himself. "You dare," he growled, stepping closer, "to accuse Markham, a man who has bled beside me, who has earned my trust 100 times over, while you stand trial for treason. How far will you drag this family's name through the mud before you're satisfied?" Elena held his gaze, her voice calm but edged with steel. "The only one dragging our name through the mud is the man you refuse to see for what he is." Marcus's eyes blazed. "Do not lecture me. I know my men. I know loyalty when I see it, and I know betrayal when I smell it. You have disgraced everything I built." The words cut deep, but Elena did not flinch. "No, father. You've been blinded by your pride, by the weight of your own reputation. Markham has used that pride against you. He knows you'll defend him because admitting his guilt would mean admitting you were wrong to trust him." For a moment, Marcus's jaw worked in silence, his face flushed with fury. "You sound just like your mother," he spat finally. "Always questioning, always doubting." Elena's chest tightened, but she forced herself forward, closing the distance between them. Her voice dropped to a near whisper, each word deliberate. "You don't see me. You've never seen me. Not as your daughter. Only as the Cross legacy. You taught me loyalty above all else, but the man you defend has twisted that loyalty into a weapon. And now you've turned it on your own blood." Marcus froze. Her words pierced deeper than she expected, but his pride held fast. He turned his back to her, shoulders rigid, and muttered through clenched teeth, "If you are wrong about this, if you are lying to save yourself, I will be the one to deliver your sentence." Elena's eyes hardened. "And if I'm right, father, then you'll realize you were willing to destroy your daughter to protect the very man who betrayed you." The silence between them was sharper than any blade. Finally, Marcus stormed away down the corridor, leaving Elena standing alone in the echo of boots that had once guided her steps. She closed her eyes, steadied her breathing. The wound of his words stung, but beneath it burned something fiercer, resolve. Markham had divided them. But if Elena was to survive, she would need to prove the truth, not only to the tribunal, not only to Rowan, but to her father. The plan was simple in design, dangerous in execution. Ethan Ward sat at the tribunal's auxiliary data terminal, fingers gliding across the keyboard with the ease of a man who had lived too long in the fine print of classified systems. He crafted a new file, clean, official-looking, layered with the kind of details only someone inside the weapons trafficking network would crave. On the surface, it was a logistics schedule, convoy routes, depot inventories, coded authorizations. But hidden beneath the data was a tracer, a Spectre signature program designed to follow anyone who accessed it back to their terminal. "This will smoke him out," Ethan said quietly, leaning back from the screen. "If Markham so much as breathes on this file, we'll know where, when, and how." Elena stood behind him, arms crossed, her posture stiff. Her gaze was sharp, but her voice carried the weight of restraint. Catching him accessing bait isn't enough. He'll claim he was auditing. He'll claim it was his duty. Men like Markham always have explanations. Ethan glanced up at her. Then what do you want? Blood. I want certainty, she said. The kind no tribunal can ignore. The kind that forces even my father to see the truth. The bait was set. The file was slipped into the classified stream, tagged with the right clearance level to make it irresistible to someone hungry for control. Then they waited. It didn't take long. Less than 12 hours later, the tracer flared to life. Ethan's screen lit up with a location ping, Restricted Terminal C, 12, Pentagon Sublevel 4. A secure console, accessible to only 3 people. Markham was one of them. Ethan gave a low whistle. He took it. He couldn't help himself. Elena leaned over the screen, studying the path of the tracer. Arrogant, she murmured. He thought no one would dare watch him. But instead of satisfaction, a knot twisted in her chest. The evidence was strong, but not unbreakable. A skilled manipulator like Markham could spin it, redirect suspicion, even claim entrapment. No, she said finally, her tone hard. It's not enough. If we go to tribunal now, they'll hesitate. They'll stall. And he'll find a way out. Ethan frowned. You realize the longer we wait, the more dangerous this gets for you. I don't care, Elena answered, her eyes locked on the glowing tracer. I've been accused with forged evidence. I won't clear my name with shadows and half-truths. We need something undeniable, something that breaks his mask in front of everyone. Her words hung heavy in the air. Ethan shut down the terminal, giving her a long, steady look. Then I hope you're ready, Valkyrie, because when we push him, he'll push back harder. And he won't care who gets crushed in the process. Elena's lips pressed into a thin line. She already knew. And she was ready. The Pentagon's classified data vault was a fortress within a fortress. Reinforced doors, biometric locks, rotating access codes. Its very existence was whispered about more than it was confirmed. But Elena Cross had been trained to slip into places that couldn't be breached. Spectre had made a career out of it. Under the cover of night, she moved like a shadow through sublevel corridors, her borrowed clearance card and Ethan's forged overrides buying her precious minutes. Each checkpoint ticked down her margin for error. If she hesitated once, alarms would howl and the game would end. At the final barrier, she pressed her palm to the scanner. A faint red light blinked, denial. She exhaled sharply, then slid a narrow piece of carbon fiber from her sleeve. A Spectre Ghost key. She pressed it into the seam, bypassing the biometric feed. After 10 agonizing seconds, the light shifted to green. The vault door hissed open. Inside, the vault was silent but alive, rows of sealed drives humming faintly in the dark. It smelled of cold metal and ozone, secrets locked in steel. Elena slipped through, her steps soundless on the grated floor. She moved to the archives tied to Project Lamia, the same code name she had uncovered earlier. Ethan's tracer had guided her here. She withdrew a drive, slipped it into a portable decryptor, and scanned the contents. The first files confirmed her suspicions. Shipment manifests rerouted under false designations. Authorizations signed by Colonel Adrian Markham. Offshore accounts funneling millions in untraceable payments. But deeper in the chain, Elena found something that made her breath catch. Signatures. Not just Markham's. Her father's. General Marcus Cross. Dozens of documents bore his authorization code, approving arms transfers, validating shipments, pushing through requests with his full authority. On paper, he wasn't just complicit. He was central. For a heartbeat, her knees threatened to give. Her father's hand, the one that had stripped her insignia, was here again, stamping approval on the very treason he accused her of. But as she read further, the truth sharpened. Each authorization had been prepared by Markham, then passed to Marcus with explanations. Urgent transfers, classified necessities, buried under jargon her father would never question. Marcus hadn't been orchestrating the conspiracy. He had been its shield, manipulated into lending his name, his reputation, his iron will to a scheme he never truly saw. Elena's chest ached. The man who had raised her as a soldier, who had turned against her in fury, was himself a pawn. A blinded general, wielded like a weapon by his most trusted aide. She copied the files, sealing them into a secure drive. Proof undeniable. Proof that could clear her name, expose Markham, and, if handled carefully, redeem her father. But as the decryptor beeped completion, she heard footsteps in the corridor outside. The vault wasn't as empty as she had hoped. The tribunal reconvened in a chamber packed tighter than before. Every officer present felt the weight of rumor, scandal, and suspicion pressing down on the air. This time, the proceedings were live broadcast to every command post in the Pentagon, a transparency demanded by Admiral Rowan himself. Elena stood at the center, no longer bound but still under guard. Her uniform was torn, her insignia gone, yet her bearing was unbroken. In her hands was the encrypted drive she had risked everything to retrieve. Rowan gave a curt nod. "Proceed." Elena stepped forward. "You accused me of treason. You paraded me as a traitor before the world. But today I bring you the truth." The massive screen behind her flickered to life. File after file appeared, shipment manifests, offshore accounts, falsified depot logs, each stamped with Colonel Adrian Markham's authorization. The chamber murmured, officers shifting uncomfortably as the evidence piled higher, undeniable. Elena raised her voice above the growing noise. Markham built a shadow network. He trafficked U.S. weapons into black markets, disguised transfers under classified designations, and doctored surveillance to cover his trail. And when Spectre came too close, when I came too close, he buried us. Then, the final blow. Documents bearing General Marcus Cross's signature appeared on screen. Gasps echoed across the hall. Marcus's face went ashen. Elena's voice softened but cut like glass. And here is where he was cleverest. He used my father's pride. He forged urgency, concealed deceit in jargon and codes, knowing Marcus Cross would never doubt the aide at his right hand. My father's name became his shield. All eyes turned to Marcus. The general, unshakable his entire career, now trembled. His mouth opened, but no words came. Finally, his voice broke through, rough and raw. I signed them, he admitted. I believed him. God help me, I believed him. The silence was absolute. Then Rowan rose to his feet. His voice carried the weight of final judgment. "Colonel Adrian Markham, stand down. You are under arrest for treason against the United States." Markham's mask cracked. For a heartbeat, his calm facade held, but the twitch of his jaw, the sweat on his brow betrayed him. He reached for his sidearm, but Rowan's guards were faster. Within seconds, Markham was disarmed, shoved to the floor and shackled. Elena watched him struggle, a snake finally dragged from its hiding place. She felt no triumph, only the cold, hollow satisfaction of vindication. Rowan turned toward her. His gaze held respect now, the respect due a specter who had clawed her way back from the grave. And Marcus looked at his daughter as though seeing her for the first time. His eyes brimmed with regret, pride drowned by shame. "Elena," he whispered, voice breaking. "I was blind." But Elena didn't answer. The truth had come, but too late to erase the wound. The tribunal's final ruling came swiftly. With Markham in chains and the evidence irrefutable, the charges against Captain Elena Cross were struck down. In front of the same audience that had branded her a traitor, she was cleared, reinstated, and declared innocent. But when the gavel fell, Elena felt no urge to reclaim her insignia. She stood tall, her voice steady. "I accept the verdict, but I will not return to service. My war ends here." The chamber fell silent at her words. Some looked shocked, others relieved. Admiral Rowan's gaze lingered on her, measuring the depth of her resolve. Her father sat quietly, broken by the truth, his eyes following her but unable to meet them for long. Weeks later, Elena walked through the doors of a modest office far from the Pentagon's steel walls. The plaque read, "Valkyrie Foundation, for those the world forgot." Inside, veterans filled the space, men and women whose service had been buried in red tape, who carried wounds the system ignored. Elena listened to them, fought for them, and gave them what she herself had been denied: a place to be seen, not as pawns or shadows, but as people. For the first time in years, she felt at peace. But the past had not fully let go. Admiral Rowan visited one evening, his presence filling the small office as easily as it filled command decks. He studied the framed photos on the walls, the maps covered with outreach routes, then turned to her. "Spectre is being reactivated," he said without ceremony. "The country needs a commander who understands both the shadows and the cost of walking in them. That commander is you." For a moment, Elena let the offer hang between them. The weight of her old code name, Valkyrie, pressed against her chest. She remembered the fire, the thrill, the purpose of being part of something unseen. But then her gaze fell on the veterans outside her office door, laughing softly together over coffee, scars and burdens momentarily lighter. She shook her head. "I gave enough of my life to the shadows. My mission now is here, with the people who've already given everything. Let someone else wear the mask. I've chosen peace." Rowan studied her, then nodded once, deeply. "Then may peace be your greatest victory, Valkyrie." When he left, Elena stood by the window, the evening sun casting long light across her desk. She was no longer bound by her father's shadow, nor Spectre's ghosts. She was something else entirely, free. Her war was over, but her legacy was just beginning.